Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panelist, Spartan Grown. So far, we've just got the one. I'll pass it over to you. Welcome, Spartan.
Thanks, Jack. It's good to be here as always. Shout out to, oh, I just got the notification that the show's on. Sweet. It's working. Um, Shout out to the chat and the early birds that are here now. But you can find me at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces on Instagram. Make sure you keep an eye on exactly how the names are on Instagram because we got copycats hard at work trying to steal your money. Or you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com or russ@gmlarmy.com, and I can help you with all your growing, lighting questions.
It's actually perfect that you are here because I titled this show, We Don't Have a Telegram, or Beware of Telegram Scams, because as of this weekend or the last week, there was a Growing with My Fellow Grower account that had up to 10K followers, and it tricked a few of our listeners into following it because it used all of the same logos from our Growing with My Fellow Growers Instagram, which is no longer active. It was ran by our old host. So it's just sort of a bunch of old dead posts on there. It's got about 2,000 followers. And so they just copied and pasted like all the last 10 posts, made a similar name, and then they started DMing people like, hey, tap into my Telegram. And shout out to Seed Person One and others who made me aware of this because I had no idea. They didn't message me and probably deliberately avoided panelists for obvious reasons. They don't want to get themselves found out as quickly. But thanks to our astute listeners, I believe that page has already been reported and taken down. But if you do see it pop back up, it was Growing with My Fellow Grower, singular. And they were asking people like, oh, yeah, check out my trusted list of vendors and this and that, or get on my Telegram. And we will never reach out to you and ask you to join our Telegram. We don't have a Telegram. We don't have a Discord, at least for Growing with Fellow Growers. I don't know about the other guys if each individual may or may not have one, but I know I can speak on my own behalf and on like Spartan's behalf. We clearly in every single description underneath these videos for the YouTube or the podcast, it always says he can be found at Spartan Grown, and then all others are impersonators or imposters. Any other name or account should be presumed otherwise to be false, otherwise than the ones that he lists at the beginning. You know, his GML emails, and then the Spartan Grown on the social media platform. I think you're just mainly on Instagram, right, Spartan?
Yeah, I just have Spartan Grown at Instagram and then the two email accounts, and that's really it. I don't have anything else going on anywhere else.
So if you
Um,
see X or Facebook or other pages, you just can immediately know those aren't Spartan. And if
or
they
even a
start
web
asking
page.
you,
Yeah, I don't have my own web page.
yeah,
All
websites
those
like,
things.
yeah, there's and unfortunately, we've gotten in, well, or for I'll say this, fortunately, we've gotten into the realm of being large enough that certain people want to emulate our pages to try and copycat us because they deem it big enough for there to be a market, and they can see that what I don't think they see is we're a knowledgeable audience of skeptical individuals who write in the title of our show. I mean, cheap home grow. We try to be frugal with our money. We try to be smart with our money. So hopefully we're not tapping into people's telegrams and sending them money for random things, whether it be seeds or grow equipment or whatever else they try to scam you into. Oh, buy this, you know, crypto coin or something like that. There's a lot of funky shit around the internet that is worth avoiding and not getting your personal details and information tied up with. Because it seems like once somebody gets scammed once or on the hook once, then they get on the list. And then more and more of these people start attacking them and calling them and emailing them and sending fake viruses to their computers and things like that. There's all sorts of, I watch these guys who reverse hack and go back and like find these scam call centers or whatever, and they basically get them shut down or like say they get like their webcam and they'll be like, you're wearing a blue shirt with like flowers on it, and your real name is blah blah blah, not Mike Jones or whatever you're saying that you are. And they like scare the crap out of these people and like hope like get some of them to quit or some of them get arrested and things like that. But it makes little change ultimately because still millions and millions of dollars are lost to these scams internationally. So it is behoove of us to make sure we don't fucking walk into some of this stuff. And it's unfortunate that it has been recently associated with our name because we want people to believe in and trust our names and our accounts. But
Yeah.
it is easy enough for somebody to just unfortunately make an account. The thing that's crazier is we don't, at least I don't have any of my accounts on Instagram verified. I am on X, but theoretically they could have like paid to get a blue check mark, and then they would have looked like even more legit. And then, it's just like don't be fooled by somebody who can buy. So I think at like 10,000 followers, like I said, so like either they switched the name from some other account, or they bought 10,000 probably robo followers that like, just don't really post anything or follow anybody, but anybody can make a Gmail account and make a new Instagram account and buy followers or whatever. That's the thing. People are that thirsty for social media attention and things like that. So it happens, but then more often than that, you're seeing it used for like scams to build legitimacy. It's like, oh, well, this one must be the real one because it's got 10K. The other one only has 2K. So don't use like that logic necessarily. And just know that we don't even use
Feel free
these.
to add them to your block list.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do.
My
Block them.
block
And
list is very extensive. That way, when they do try to contact you, it automatically keeps that from happening, so you don't fall for anything.
the other thing you can do is, I think recently on Instagram, it's like block this account and any accounts that they create
May create,
or
yeah,
associated with them. And so that way, if they change their name or if they make new accounts, thankfully, Facebook and Instagram's trying at least to create a little bit of a defense for people. So yeah, that's something that definitely needed to be addressed, and I wanted to put out there at the top of the show because it was something that happened within the last 7 days between our recordings, and I posted it on my story. I'm probably gonna make a full post on X as well as Instagram just to make it not just for this account because this one seems like it's already gone, but beware that in the future, this probably it's not the first and won't be the last. I mean, I've seen fake Spartan pages, I've seen fake Brandon pages who I think they have just larger followings. I think there might be fake Dr. MJ pages as well. Once you get past, 5 or maybe even 10K followers, there are going to be fake accounts out there impersonating you. So it's especially if you have good photos and good information and things like that, it's so easy to take a screenshot and reshare a photo. And some people might even just think it's like, oh, that's a backup account or an alternative account or things like that. So it's easy to, I've almost fallen victim to that. Not that I'm going to like buy something, but just like click follow because I follow so many people and their backup page because Instagram does delete cannabis pages. So even like myself, I have a backup that I post nothing on, Jack_Greenstock on Instagram. I literally have zero posts on there, but it's just like, here's my backup account because one, I can't follow more than 7,500 on my first page and I wanted to follow more growers. But two, I know posting cannabis content, it gets deleted a lot of the times, shadow banned, and just outright, removed. So I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. Thankfully, X is now not banning any cannabis content or shadow banning it. So I'm pretty much posting all my stuff over there now and haven't had any issues. So then I do pay the little membership or whatever, so I put this show up every Monday morning on X, because you used to be able to just post like 140 characters, right? Like on Twitter back in the day. And then they bumped it to 280. But now I can put a fucking 2 hour long podcast with video on there. So we've actually reached probably like, I'd say like a couple hundred more people view it, and at least like a half dozen or so are commenting on there. And it's people that probably didn't have any exposure to the podcast before. So I'm happy to be growing into a new community, and there's a lot of really cool people over there. There's
yeah.
like
Shout out. That's cool to be able to reach out to different communities, and and some of the streaming software allows you to multi-stream to all those softwares. So if they do support a live stream, like even I think you can stream live to Instagram and YouTube and you know whatever else, maybe X as
X
well.
or
I don't know.
Twitch eventually. Yeah, I think I did just personally like tried to stream on X like a solo. Like I'll sometimes I just smoke a few bong bowls and like chat with followers on Instagram. So I tried it on X, but like the feedback was like way worse, like getting the comments and like you can do like a wave feature whenever somebody joins on Instagram. On X, it was like hard to see who was there. Like it put it automatically on like subscribers mode, and I don't even have the option for you to subscribe to me. So like no one was able to comment for like my first live stream. So I was just like, all right, I guess there's no one fucking here. And then shout out to Brian 420 PM. He's like, hey dude, it's subs only mode. And then I was like, oh fuck, let me try this again. And I like launched it. And hopefully it's gotten better since then. This was probably like a month or two ago. But yeah, I will say Instagram Live is a little bit better than X Live currently. But I think that, you know, I pay a fucking membership fee for Zoom just to stream this to YouTube. Just because I took over from the guy who used to do this and that's how he did it. And like we originally were on Google Hangouts and then they didn't like let you have more than 10 people or you could only stream for
Yeah.
like an hour or something. And we did 2 hours. So we're like, well, we got to figure out a way to do 2 hours. And now there's like, I see people do StreamYard, and this is probably a little bit inside baseball for you all, but it's just Spartan and I, and we're spitballing and trying to keep the show alive and well, and let you know a little bit about kind of what it takes to run this and make sure that we're not
It's
doing
a peek
things the wrong
behind the
way.
curtain, folks. A peek behind the curtain.
Well, back in the day, there were, and I think there still is, there's a software called OBS, Open Broadcast Software, and it's free.
It's
And
still there, man. It's on my computer right now.
so I might eventually either go to that. I have tried StreamYard in the past and things like that, where you can just like send people a link, and then similarly like
The
to
big
this, we
advantage
can
about
send a link out.
StreamYard is it's cloud-based, so that the guest, well, it's more of an advantage for guest shows. We don't have tons of guests, but yeah, people can just jump on and it doesn't matter the hardware so much because everything's
Yeah. Well,
cloud-based.
and if
So
they have a Zoom that's like for family or business, they're not like jumping in with their government name. It's like it tells you what your name is before you log in with the StreamYard link, and it like lets you
that's
preview
it. That's a
yourself.
big one.
That is a big one. Like even like my own, I'm guilty of that on occasion where I'm like, oh fuck, I jumped into a few family calls with a Jack Greenstock name. It's just like funny, It's like hanging with the family under the pseudonyms here. But it is interesting that there are options out there. Zoom is not the only one. It does work, and I'm a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of guy. We've been doing this for how many years, and it's
Oh
keeping the
yeah,
ball
for
rolling.
sure. And I'm
So
sure Zoom's going to add new features. Maybe they'll be able to do everything you want to do eventually.
that's true. And I also think they have stuff that I'm underestimating the value of. Like right now, I have a fan running next to me, like a window fan, and it's blowing really hard. And I also have a cat fountain that trickles water through a little carbon filter to recycle to give my cats clean, fresh water all the time.
Nice.
And I can hear them subtly in like my headphones in the very background. But whenever I listen to the podcast, Zoom's technology blocks that shit out, like to the stream. So somehow they figured out a way. And even like this, I don't have a green screen. This is just like, and granted, when I move quickly, it doesn't work perfectly. But like when I'm standing still, like it kind of works almost as if I've got a green screen. You could see through my headphones here, like when I'm moving around a couple times, you could see like the window shades and whatever the hell these things are called behind me, the little decorations. But yeah, it's Zoom gets the job done. So in the meantime, I think I'll continue to use it as long as it's working and they don't get ridiculous with some sort of fees or anything, because it's like a yearly thing that I pay once a year and it's not horrible. But
That's
yeah,
the thing. Don't let them, yeah, don't let them sneak higher fees without you realizing it.
that's what they all end up doing, right? It's like Netflix used to probably be like under $10, and I think it's like 15 now, and they don't let you share the password anymore. Back in the day, you could have the whole block on one subscription. Not to say that that's the right thing to do, but I'm actually all for
Everything, yeah,
business
but
and making
that's
money.
you're not gonna get much sympathy. Everything, the rent does the same shit. Everything does that, man.
Yeah, man, food. I mean, literally, what hasn't gone up? And I actually feel better about this because, like, I was like, oh man, this is kind of political BS, and like people don't want to hear about this. But then I was talking, I'm fucking talking shit with Eagle with somebody from across the pond. I think it was Iceni, and he was saying it's the same shit over there. Shit's all expensive over there too. It's all gone up. Heat, electricity, food. Like, so it makes me feel better that we're not alone in this. Like, because it's easy to think like, oh man, our politicians did X, Y, or Z, and made things cost more. But then you look globally and realize we did just go through a pandemic that shut a lot of shit down. And you could obviously go on the either side of whether we handled it right or wrong or whatever, but that's not anything for this show
We
to
could go on a
get
huge
into.
tangent here. We could talk about why there's wars going on, might be an idea, why shit's going up in price, and there's all kinds of things.
It impacts, I mean, growing too, because like fertilizer cost is one directly that comes into mind, especially because China and Russia are large producers of a lot of the fertilizers and exporters of oils and things like that that are used or necessary for production of fertilizers. So, and it's even like impacts, we saw with the fucking shipping containers, the boats, right? They had to stop going through that one port because there was so much drama. Again, I shouldn't call it drama. There was actual like military conflict going on. So they were taking a safer route and going all the way around South America, which makes things take a lot longer and cost a lot more. And so the cost, businesses are like, hey, we're not gonna, run business at a loss. I could stay. Someone I heard a quote the other day. It's like I could stay home and lose money, and the lunch is a lot better at home, which I think is just a funny way of thinking about shit. It's like if you're gonna run a business and lose money, like why the fuck even go out there? It's like stay home and fucking eat your good snacks. But that was like sort of the thought with this is like a business, whether it's a shipping container company or a fertilizer company, they're not going to keep operating if they're at a loss, ideally, unless they're like very early into a market and trying to establish market share, or they have a bunch of excess revenue, so they're able to take market share by doing that. Like Amazon comes to example when they like shut down diapers.com by selling diapers at like 80% loss until diapers.com failed, so that they could get that market share later on. So there's like that kind of shit. But most businesses want to make a profit and continue to operate so that they can pay their employees and pay their rents and pay their electric and all the other shit. And so that means when they're paying more for their product, we end up paying more for it as a consumer, which obvious supply demand and cost of goods. But ultimately, it does play a role into our grows, and it makes me wonder about you know we do often in the past talk, oh, hydro versus cocoa, and like I used to grow hydroponically in cocoa, or hydro versus I said hydro versus cocoa versus organic
I
or
was
whatever,
gonna say that's like organic versus organic fucking argument right there.
right.
Hydro versus cocoa.
But ultimately, in the long term, like I've had the same dry amendments and things like I bought one time years ago that I can keep recycling and reusing, where my nutrient lines I ran out of multiple times per year and had to repurchase. And granted, you could buy larger bottles or whatever, but it's not like the stuff would last multiple runs, like um, in the same way that organic, like maybe 60 or 80% of it breaks down, or even 20 or 30% of it breaks down, and some of it's still there for the next run. I'm not giving 100% soil charge every single run. I'm giving a little reamendment, and maybe some fresh soil on a transplant, things like that. And in times like these, when things get tighter because of any circumstance, I don't want to get back into the whole conflicts or, viruses and things like that. But whatever the reason is, there's always going to be one, right? Um, Market's doing well, market's doing bad, blah, blah, blah. Costs and things go up and down. So with the ebbs and flows, I think that is another consideration. The ultimate, being able to buy once, cry once, maybe with organics, get yourself a setup where you're like, I've got a bale of peat, I've got a bucket of worm castings, I've got bag of rice hulls, a bag of pumice, and then some simple
Yeah.
amendments.
You got all that. You're a rich man. You are a rich man. You got all that laying around.
You can grow anything too. It's not just
Yeah.
cannabis. Like I have a whole garden, like dream list that I'm working my way through. And it's like I've taught myself how to grow multiple things because cannabis is like the thing that was my guiding light. And I know a lot of people are the opposite. They gardened and then found cannabis or whatever, but it's gotten me into growing so many different things. And it just the potential is so exciting to be able to say like, oh fuck, like this is a cool flower. I like it, and I'm going to grow it because now I know I can grow flowers. And I just research, oh, it likes this kind of soil. Well, guess what? That's kind of the same soil that cannabis likes. And so a lot of flowers are like really easy to grow if you've grown cannabis before. But even like, fruit and veggies, sometimes they're a lot of the same, well draining soils with good, like a decent amount of organic matter. Tend to do pretty fucking well for a lot of things. It's like there's a few things like blueberries or something that want like really acidic soils, or like
Yeah.
pine trees that will get like weird soils, but a good majority of what people grow in like containers or pots or raised beds, like it almost all is like the same. I almost hate to say it, like you could go to your big box store and get an organic mix and just throw it in there, and it's gonna work 80, 90% of the way. Like you can judge it up and make it better in time with your own touches, but the basic generic stuff fucking gets the job done.
Sometimes that's like, I feel like looking back, and I haven't grown, I've been growing for what, maybe 10 years really with cannabis, but I used to grow, my whole life vegetables growing up. And my first job was on a farm and we did plenty of planting there. And I feel like I've gone full circle kind of a thing. It's like, because we've always, the cannabis plant, because it's a high value. I mean, you're paying $5, $10 a seed sometimes. Sometimes people pay more, not I won't, but some people will. And it's a really high value seed, so you baby the hell out of it. We treat it way different than what we do most all other plants. But in the end, they're really just they're just like the other plants, like you're saying. And I think people sometimes make it harder in their head because they don't know much about it. And the information, because it's kind of a restricted item, cannabis is all over the place. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what the straight answer is sometimes. And and so people, just just do whatever. But I went down the whole route of I wanted to do automation, I wanted to do salts, I wanted to do cocoa, I wanted to try deep water culture. Yeah, and I finally settled after all my tries and everything on just, my sip containers with the organic grows and what's simple and easy for me. And it's back to like a lot similar to what I would grow vegetables, you know what I mean? Or be growing other plants outside. So it's funny to kind of do that whole circle. And then even see it on the commercial scale, which was cool, at Mecanico and see how it's done there. And to see that, then it's like when I was there, I was like, okay, this makes sense why you would want to do salts. This makes sense. You know what I mean? And under this high restriction for microbials and everything else, and you want repeatability. It's pretty important. So you can plan things out there, and yeah, it works in that system, or at least it works pretty well.
The one devil's advocate there would be like Green Life Productions out in Vegas, who's on like their like 40-second cycle no-till beds, and they're selling into the Vegas commercial market, which has those stringent CFU counts and like all the same testing and stuff.
Yeah, but my caveat is if you have an industry and you have, I don't know, I don't even know what the number is, 100,000. It's probably not that many, but 100,000 single grows, and you have, 50 organic grows that are doing it. There's either something wrong in the regulation or there's something wrong with the growth system. So I mean, I'm still not convinced. Yeah, you can give me examples for sure. And there's some in
No, it's
Michigan
it's
as
like you.
well that are
I
doing
gave the unicorn, the fucking like
it.
you
Yeah.
said 50. I think 50 would be generous. I think like 10, like on the nationwide, like and maybe there's more people could. There's probably actually like around 50, but ultimately it is much harder. And everyone says that. Like I've worked with and am currently working with large commercial scale operations, and they're going in cocoa or hydroponic because CFU counts and sterilization options that they wouldn't have otherwise, and consistency and you know ABs are going to be AB next year and the year after, and the microbial consortiums, depending on the heat and the temperature and things like that, might swing a little bit. Like your soil might be a little bit richer in cycle 6 or 10 or 12, depending on how much worm casting or what worm casting or compost you use and how well composted it is. And,
Yeah,
organics
this
is a much
organics
less,
is, yeah, much less control,
yeah. And
I would
yeah, it's
say.
like a less specific, like a hydro can almost be like a scalpel, where organics is like, a baseball bat. You can fucking hit a home run with it. It's going to, be very strong still and effective. And maybe it's like, more like scissors versus scalpel or something. But ultimately, the organic has a little bit less control. And people like Brandon Rust are an example of like, if you want control, look at what that dude's doing. He's like taking tissue tests and soil testing and like pushing it to again, like they're the unicorn examples, the very few, but at least it's possible, and it's good to see. I met one of the people that he worked with in Hawaii, I'm going to fuck it up, Kerwalea, but met some of the people from his farm, and they were really complimentary of Brandon and his knowledge and how well things had gone because of, that expertise that he brings to that side of things. So it's cool to see it dialed in. But even on a more simple front, when we asked for guests a few weeks ago, recurring person that came up and that I do think we can get because pretty sure Aaron the grower has got a good connection with him, and I think maybe you and others on the panel have spoke with him in the past before is Clackamas Coot.
Well, yeah, Jim, he's recovering now. He's doing well, but he just suffered uh, a health scare. So yeah, I don't know if the timing is exactly right yet for him, but yeah, I would anytime I'd love to talk to Jim, man.
It's
He's
definitely not a rush, but maybe more led into my next point, which is that the Coots mix was such a simple but effective thing, and it was based off the Cornell mix, the one third, one third, one third, one third aeration, one third Canadian sphagnum compost, and then or one third peat moss, I should say, and then one third. compost. His preferred would be vermicompost or worm castings. And a lot of people have had a lot of success with that. And it's not just for cannabis, like the Cornell mix was for, corn or whatever. You could grow all types of fruits and vegetables and whatever in there.
It's a good
And
raised bed mix. Yeah, and you can just go to town with it.
yeah, I taught a few, family members and friends to grow with that mix, and a lot of people have had a lot of success with it. And it's very affordable. Like when you do it locally, like you can go to a box store like a Tractor Supply or Home Depot or Lowe's or your garden center, get you know, however many cubic feet of peat and then, worm castings. And it's like fairly simple. You get, pumice or something for aeration. And I also like rice hulls for the combination of a little bit of extra aeration as well as a kind of cheap mulch layer. And yeah, it's surprising how effective the whole keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method, man. Like a lot of people really have had a lot of success with really basic, simple soils. Give
Well,
them
the
what they
thing
need.
is, it's like you can love your plants too much. Absolutely, you can love your plants too much, and to keep it simple kind of pushes the other way, pushes against that. It's like get out of the way. Stop stop fucking, it's like a protective mom or something coming down and slapping your hands and like stop touching the plants, just leave them alone. Let them do their things. They're plants. Um, that's kind of the thing. There's so many people want to I've heard it put much less eloquently, like I forget who it was. I think maybe it was Leighton Morrison, and I love Leighton Morrison. But he calls them morons because they always want to put more on. So like they want to put more on the plant. They want to either spray it or they want to put an additive of some sort or a top dress or something. They want to put more on. He's like, don't be a moron. So I love that stuff. Yeah, when sometimes, if you see something that sticks out that you might be a problem, just relax, give it a day or two and see if it gets better or worse. Sometimes it just gets better and you don't know what the hell happened, but it's fine. And you doing something would have made it way worse.
Yeah, it might have been working through whatever the issue was that you're seeing. It's like a delayed reaction sometimes. Like I think, you know, uh, we often assume what's happening right now is the cause, but it might have been something days ago. You cranked your light up, now it's reacting to the light, or you gave it that PK booster that you read was gonna make your plant yield more, or that terp booster or whatever, and then all of a sudden now your plants have red stems or they're drooping or something. Because the thing that I really love with the sips, whether it's Earthbox, a DIY sip, or a city picker, or any sub-irrigated planter or bed. I just saw a guy who was recommending his sip bed. I'm like, damn, there's so many like
I'm
levels to this,
jealous.
But however you sip, there is the just looking down the hole and then not realizing like how simple watering can get, because I was a pot lifter for a long time. I swore I had the best relationship with every plant, and I did a good job, even when I was cocoa, organic, whatever. Admittedly, like I would 2, 3 times a day at least, go in there and lift those pots up. And I'd have a relationship with that plant. I could tell you, oh, next time I lift it, it's going to be real light and the plant will start to droop if I don't give it water. And like I could really have that relationship with each plant. Like that one drinks a little bit faster, this one drinks a little bit faster, blah, blah, blah. But now with the sip, it's just like, oh, is there water in the hole? I'm just going to leave it alone. It's empty. I'm going to refill it.
Yeah, no guessing. I love it.
It's like green light, go, red light, stop. It's that simple. And over and under watering, even when you get down to that like ultra special relationship, the first time you transplant, shit gets funky because the root mass isn't used to that new pot. And even if you pot up appropriate sizes, like 4 out of 5 might take great. And then that one just like didn't take off as well. Maybe you gave it a little too much water, a little not enough, or the microbe mix, whatever, like for whatever the fucking reason. Or maybe that plant itself just wasn't as healthy. There's so many little what ifs. But I've seen it happen enough times to realize that as much as we think we might have it all dialed in, nature will humble you at times. And you might think that everything's going great. And then that's when that fifth plant slides out. You're like, you rocked it the first 4 transplants. And then that fifth one comes out and the root ball just falls apart in your hands, just like into dust. All the other ones were perfect moisture level, but that one was a little closer to the intake. And it's like, haha, you thought that you were going to crush this effortlessly. You're like, I'm on my last one. Boom. No, my plant.
There are
Stick it in
so
there
many
and hope.
examples in the garden, man. Just like you think you're gonna, you know, bend this branch and everything's gonna be fine. And then you hear a snap and it just completely comes off. Whoops. That's not cool. I guess I'm cloning today. Uh, yeah, all kinds of you gotta learn how to roll with the punches in the garden, that's for sure. Otherwise you're gonna be a little angry, I'm sure.
Grumpy
I don't
gardeners,
know.
I
The
think.
garden's the most relaxing thing I think I do, honestly.
Yeah, even when shit hits the fan like that, it's just like, you know what? At least this plant's still alive. At least I can take a clone. At least I can learn next time don't water it again so soon, or maybe try a different method. Maybe bottom water. Maybe get a sip. Maybe get a moisture meter of some kind. A lot of them are crappy. A lot of the ones that I saw initially are very bad. So be wary of moisture meters. I'll say that. Um, the decent ones might be a little bit expensive, unless somebody out there in the comments, growers, if you have a affordable one, throw it out there if you've
Oh,
been
I'm
having good
sure
experience.
GrowLink's got one out there. I'm sure they've got a good one. Or I think Blue Mat's got a type of soil moisture meter as well. Gives you a digital display, which is cool. Gives you a number
They're
there.
on the more pricey side though, right? Well, it just I guess depends on the bed size and how many you need to get ultimately.
Yeah, I haven't really priced them, honestly. I don't know.
I know it's cool that it gives like the M bar, whatever, like specifically it's like a scientific readout of exactly how
Like the
much like water
pressure.
pressure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's cool because like some of those carrots, I think they call them, it's like a almost literally carrot shaped object that goes into the
Ceramics.
soil, wicks
Ceramic
it up
carrots, yeah.
through the ceramic, and then they have like drippers that will then drip it back out onto the drier parts of the top of the soil. And I've seen some people really crush it with them, but I also know like 90%, well, maybe I'm over exaggerating, don't get mad at me, Blue Matt, but I've seen a lot of people flood their rooms with them because if they don't set it up just right, like the water thing has to like be higher, I guess, because it's like a gravity fed system. So there's like a backup water basin that feeds into the beds. And if you have the thing like adjust it a little bit too much, it'll just like start squirting out like, full bore and you'll come back to a completely flooded bed. So be warned and be careful. I think a lot of people are liking the soaker tapes and things like that with the blue mat because you can kind of more evenly, weave
You
it
can
through the
vary
bed.
those if you want to.
That is cool.
That'd be
And
sub-irrigation.
the other, yeah, like speaking of sub-irrigated mats, shout out to like 2020 Mendocino. I've mentioned this a long time ago, but I can't find their post. But they had some sort of they did a side-by-side test where they did like their regular watering and then they did these sub-irrigation mats where their beds were on top of like a large rectangular mats that had like perforated things that you could pump water into it and then it would be sucked up into the bottom of the beds. And I guess it worked really well for him, or maybe it did for a little bit and then they switched back. But yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool idea for the larger scale.
Honestly, the best thing that I'd gotten in my garden to help me out because I'm terrible at my biggest weakness is taking notes because I never really did. Um, but I got like just little dry erase those little dry erase boards just from the local grocery store or whatever. And I have one hanging on the door to the flower room, and I've got one in the veg space, and it's like it helps me a lot diagnosing things. Like we were talking earlier, like you see something funky on a plant and you instantly want to do something. I could go to the dry erase board and be like, did I do something within the last 2 or 3 days? Because anytime I do, like, because I really don't do a whole hell of a lot, but I might, when I do something, like maybe I'll top dress or something, I write it down. I write it down on that whiteboard and I write the date down. And so that I can look back at it and be like, oh yeah, I just top dressed this such and such a time ago. Maybe that's why this has happened. Let's write it out. Or to have that information where normally I'd have for sure forgotten it, you know what I mean? Uh, is super helpful because instead of, running and trying to think I have a problem and putting more on, I can look back and be like, oh no, just you're good. Here's another example was I do, one of the things I like to do is I like to do a top dress of just worm castings and gypsum sometimes. And I had just done that in my flower room and I came into my flower room. It was probably 2 or 3 days later And the I was seeing like just the first signs of a calcium deficiency in the leaves, like the little rust start to form. And instantly I went to go get uh some gypsum. And then I looked at my board and I was like, no, you just did that like 3 days ago. Give it time. It'll get there. And of course, I just gave it time and ignored the problem and it was fine. So it was perfect to be able to have that whiteboard. And I like the whiteboard. That's how I got my because I never liked it to keep records because to me I feel like it's like I'm not doing anything wrong, but it feels like I'm still in the days of doing things wrong. So I feel like I'm creating evidence against myself or whatever, records of myself. So having the whiteboard is like, okay, I can have this information until I cut the plant or until I trim the plant or whenever, then I can erase it and just write over it again. And so that's how I kind of like got around my thinking to like, no, you're creating evidence against yourself, but to still be able to have notes, to still benefit from notes in the grow room. And and yeah, I think that's been the best upgrade that I've had in my grow room probably in the last year at least. Besides lighting, I mean, shit.
It's funny how simple stuff like that can actually make a fairly major difference because it prevents you from double dosing or you're thinking, oh, maybe I did already top dress. I'm just going to leave it. And they're looking a little hungry. And it's like, wait, no, I didn't actually top dress. I gave this fertilizer, this, whatever amino or humate or something like that. So maybe I can top dress as well, or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should wait to see how the other thing works out. And it's so easy to forget. I do agree with you that unfortunately that we have a history of like you'd get criminal masterminding charges back in the day if you got arrested with notebooks displaying like how to grow cannabis, and part of that was nutrient logs and things like that. So a lot of us have been trained to like burn the books, not keep them at all, or be very inconspicuous about them as much as you can. And admittedly, when we got legal in California, I started going against that a little bit and really trying to get scientific with everything. And like I was counting the grams and doing the exact like, nutrients in this week and EC and all
I
that
was doing
measurements.
that from the caregiver days, a million percent. I was doing that. I have logbooks here still
It's fun to look back at
to
actually,
look
because
back
like,
at. Yeah, I was looking at it back at them just yesterday, and I was like, man, I've got stuff back to 2014 in here.
yeah, man, I was looking at a couple from the, that similar era. And it's just funny because, you know, I would see like, oh, maybe I'm hitting it a little bit too hard, and I'd have to back off on nutrients. And this was like cocoa days, running bottle nutrients. And when I had had a good grow, thankfully, I had all that stuff recorded. So then I just emulated that, and I was like, oh, this is the sweet spot. I'm like, I could do this, this, that, and like I got to the point where I didn't even need a EC meter at all. I was just like, I know I could give like nutrient, and then next feed will be water or I was doing compost teas because the hydro store would just give them out for free like once a week. And I'd go in there and just chat it up with one homie because he was like one of the cool people locally. And
Nice.
so it was he had a lot of the good cuts, like old San Diego stuff. And I got a cherry pie from him, a J1 from him, and they ended up shutting
Nice.
down, and it's like a cryo center now. So I don't feel bad like talking about it. Is no longer there, but it was good times, man. There's a lot of bad things that come from like hydro stores, and like granted, like people pay too much for some stuff and maybe get some bad advice. I actually got, to be honest, what I still feel to this day with like all the knowledge that I've come to know, I just feel like I got good advice. Like I was getting advice from not the guy who owned the store, but like the one who just worked there because he loved growing and he wanted to get like his stuff a little bit cheaper. I'm like, well, what do you grow with
The guy
personally?
with
I'm like,
passion. So
yeah, he
that's the
loved
guy
it.
you want to go to in any profession. The guy that's got passion for it and love for it for sure.
I would like wait till everybody else like cleared out the shop, and I'd go in and just like look for this dude. And whenever he wasn't there, I just kind of like roll past. The owner was cool. Like if I
Yep.
needed something, I'd stop in and grab it. But sometimes I would go and just be specifically like almost looking for advice because he took me under his wing because I had never grown with I had grown organic before and I'd grown in deep water culture, but this was my first time growing in cocoa. And like I didn't know Doc at the time. I didn't know about cocoaovercannabis.com. I was like, looking at like Grow Weed Easy articles and like whatever I could find on Google, like uh old school like Jorge Cervantes, type of and Ed Rosenthal books, and references to that kind of stuff. And so not to say that it isn't usable, I definitely got my first grow up and going, and I got a harvest in. It wasn't the most pretty stuff in the whole world, but I still to this day, like I have some of that hash that I saved in temple balls, like froze it. It was a huge yield. So like it ended up turning a lot of it to hash, and it got me back into the growing game. So I'm thankful for even the subpar to mediocre advice to get me back into it, and then like refining it down through like a combination of scientific articles, advice, my own personal experience, other growers' experience locally, online, and just grinding out year after year. When you have 5, 6 crops a year indoor, you can learn so fucking much across so many
Yeah.
different strains. It's just like a constant evolution process. Like a lot of the people that have a passion for it, I think you see that kind of like curve. It's like you could start off at like brand new grower and just like in a couple years be so deeply involved and passionate and knowledgeable. Like you could be running full fucking scale grows after just a couple years
Yeah,
of fucking around in your home grow.
absolutely. I know people doing it right now.
Miss Nudie Grows is a perfect example, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
she was like home grower on this show a couple years ago, and now she's like rated according to some outlets like #1 grower in Canada, not #1 female grower, like the #1 grower. She was winning like cups, like multiple cups, like CBD and
Yep.
THC shit. She like so proud of her. Like she fucking chased her dream down and like did everything every possible way. Went to multiple facilities till she found one that was really more her fit, and all the while was doing her home grow thing, and like traveling along and
Crushed it.
just yeah, badass dude.
Yeah, still crushing it. That Tanner, is it Tanner Stewart Farms or something like that?
Stewart's Farm, I think it's
Yeah,
like
Stewart's Farms. Yeah.
they have like
They were talking about,
aquaponics.
yeah, they're talking about exporting too now. So they're like
Yeah, Canada has
international.
the legal right, so good on them.
Yep.
That's awesome shit, man. I think
Hell
that's the
yeah.
future. That's the future. I think California, when we go federal, will export to a lot of people that have never gotten to try Humboldt or Mendo Bud. That'll be like a big, they might have and not even known it because a lot of like Cali Bud, I was smoking Cali Bud in Ohio. I just knew a dude who fucking had a van who drove his ass all the way to California and got some.
They had
And
a van down by the river.
that old school, man. I like dated his younger sister when I was in middle school or high school or something, but that was my
Perfect.
connection, man. And it was so fire. Like when, yeah, no offense, when you're used to getting like Michigan or Canadian Beasters, like the Beasters was like dry sifted before it came over, and some of the Michigan stuff, y'all were just getting your feet under you back when I was a kid. This is like not like in the last
Nah,
10
you
years. This
just
is a
didn't
long
know
time
where the
ago.
good stuff was, man. We just weren't letting it. We were
That's
tight-lipped.
true. The best stuff
We
doesn't
weren't.
travel far.
No.
I'll contend that for the long time. The best shit that I ever got when I was in Ohio, I think came from Native Americans that were growing it locally. And like they had the real, true skunk. Like I had it and I was sitting in the bleachers, 15 rows behind my assistant principal, up in the bleachers, 15 rows back. He was like row 1 or 2, and I was like 15 or 16.
That's some bad luck, man.
I was back, and he was he was like cool, man. Like this guy, he played basketball, and I think he was funny enough, maybe from Detroit, and moved into the Cleveland area. And he turned around, and I think it was more so like he might have saw us with fucking red eyes or something. But he said it. He's like, I smell skunk. He turned around, and I was like, oh shit. And it was us. Like it was like a bunch of like innocent fucking like girls that were like honor roll, like goody
That's
whatever.
when you pointed them. You're like,
Yeah, it's them for sure. And maybe they were fucking smoking on that good, but we had the
yep.
fucking shit that even when it was double ziplocked in your pocket, you could smell it. And I knew, like, I'd get in trouble with parents or friends' parents or, whoever was around. You couldn't hide the smell of this shit. We didn't have like vacuum seal containers back then. We just had Ziploc baggies. And like a lot of the time it was the lunch baggie that didn't even have a zipper on it. It was like the open top and you'd like roll it and like lick it to fucking
Oh
stick
yeah.
it, and that thing is not holding
And
cannabis
roll it.
smell, and
No.
not a
That's
chance.
terrible, man. That's like when you don't want to spend nothing on packaging.
Funny enough, it's like less waste than a lot of the shit that we get nowadays, where it's like
It's
you get a
true.
box with a jar, and then the jar has like a terp seal, and then like another seal,
Yeah,
and
why can't
then
we just go to boxes? Why can't we just go to boxes that can like decompose and
compostable.
shit?
I think
Yeah.
a glass jar, man, like reusable. Bring your own jar. Bring old school, like fucking take tongs, and they go, oh, you like this one from this one? We'll put it out onto a
Oh my
scale.
God, that's dangerous, Jack. You can't have fucking the weeds out in the open like that. You could have contact buds from people just fucking smelling and being in the same facility. That's insane.
Oh man,
Yeah, treat it like
it
it's
was a golden
toxic waste
era.
or something.
It was a golden era, the medical days when we used to do that, and it was just
Yeah, dude.
fine. It's funny because they have sniffer jars and shit now, so like you can't actually touch the bud, but like they're in a little container and it has like a little twist top and it's like perforated. So like if you twist it left, it opens up with these little slots. And if you twist it right, it closes them up. And I even saw the one I was at had a Smokus Focus. Have you seen those where they've got like the little magnifiers on the top and it's got like a
Yeah, where they
LED?
magnify the light into the fucking bud and burn it up all day.
Yeah, so they had that jar or whatever, but like 90% of the fucking jars lights were burnt out. But then like
Oh.
I could just open the jar. It was like not sealed. So I could just crack it open and like look in there and smell it. So like and somebody could have theoretically like taken it. Obviously there's like a bud tender standing there with you. I was actually very surprised by the lack of security at a few of these places that I went to recently. I had a gig that I had to do where I went to a few shops around Southern California and literally like no security, not a security guard. There was like a person who buzzed you in, but it was just like, and like the one, they have like those doors that you're supposed to like push a button and then like it latches or whatever. Like when I went to it, it was like before I even pushed the button, I could just push it open. Like I could see it was like cracked and like didn't close all the way. It's like, holy shit, man. Like I get it. It's hard to fucking run a profit on the California legal market, but y'all need to start employing security. Not like I've just seen too many places get hit, unfortunately, to like go in there and be like, wow, it's literally just like some young bud tender in here. And
That's
like,
scary, man. That's scary. That's really scary to think of all the employees. Because Michigan had a
I feel
string
bad for
for
him,
a
man. I never go
while,
to the legal
people getting
shops.
robbed.
I never go to the legal shops, but like recently, I had some work with somebody to go locate some things that they wanted from the legal market specifically. And I was just like a courier, so to speak, and trying to help people out where I can. And just it's always interesting to see, what's out there and go to shops that I'd never been to before. And it's always just fun driving around with like in this case it was plants. So hooking people up with genetics. So getting people growing, man. That's what this is all about, right? I'll never
That's
feel
what's
guilty or
up,
bad about
man.
that. Getting
Spread the
genetics in people's
seed.
hands. I
So
can't say exactly what it
XYZ,
was.
did you see XYZ's Vector's comment here? It says, hey, you want to see the effect of a 28 hour days on cannabis plants. They are in late flower. Does
I
that,
do.
I'm assuming it means,
He's
I don't
messing with
understand what
his
that means.
photo period cycle, like extending the days.
14 and 14, is that what he's trying to say?
I think so.
Because
14 on, 14 off. XYZ, you can confirm or deny in the comments there, but we'll send the link out and you could just join us because we're about the 2 hour mark.
interesting.
And I think this is kind of like a chat for a little bit and then open up the panel, but I'll exclusively let you in first and then have you be like our little spotlight. And then
Ooh,
we'll see if anybody else wants to
exclusive.
join.
You just won like a duck race or something right there. That's how cool that was.
There's like a, bum, 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 little horn going off somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I might have
Shout out
listened to
to
too much of the right
GML. I don't
Earl
know if
music.
he's watching the show today, but he was out your neck of the woods. He went out to San Francisco because he got asked to be on the James Loud podcast. So he's going to be interviewed by James Loud, but he was sharing with me just the prices. Oh my God, I don't know how you people live out there. It cost him like $57 for a breakfast buffet. It's like $57. What is going on in the world?
It
How is that
depends on where you're at, but
sustainable? Oh my
oh, it's
God.
expensive. You got to make a shit ton of money to live most places out here, unless you live
Yeah.
really far away from the ocean.
A shit ton of money just to fucking claw by at a, I don't know, barely living. I mean, $57 for breakfast. Damn, I can fry some eggs myself. Fuck that.
Well, the eggs are like, you
Yeah, well,
know,
how much are the eggs?
it depends on what kind you get, but we get a brand called Happy Eggs, and I think they're over like a buck an egg. I think it's over $12 per a
A
dozen.
dollar an egg. I want a dollar a dozen. The hell are you talking about? A dollar an egg.
No, man,
Wow.
we're talking like 12, 13, $14 for a dozen.
Bro, I trade like 3 gram RSO stick for like I don't know how many dozens of eggs that lady brings me.
That's what's up, man. I need to get a local connection. I had
Yeah,
one
you need to
when
get
I
a
was working
local
with a
plug
client,
for eggs, man.
but they moved out of the area, unfortunately, and got to reconnect. Or it's just you know, convenience versus the effort. I haven't come across it. Like when it crosses my path, I would totally engage. Like I have somebody who grows blueberries and like all other types of stuff around here locally. I get avocados and a bunch of different
That's
clients who grow
awesome.
a bunch of different stuff. And I'm always getting, whenever somebody offers me anything homegrown, even if I don't like it, I'll accept it. Just like,
You
yeah.
can trade it for something else. You trade up, man.
Well, and my wife might like it. And like, who knows? Maybe the homegrown version of it is better than what I'm
That's
used
true.
to. Tomatoes, I used to think, oh man, tomatoes fucking suck. They're flavorless. They're like these big,
Mm.
kind of squishy, flavorless. Until you have a homegrown tomato, what that's like a rare variety or an heirloom. And then you're like, oh my God, this has so much flavor to it. It's like
Oh man,
it
I was
could
eating
dominate the
peas
whole
out of
entire
the
meal.
garden. The last 2 days I've been eating peas straight off the vine. I'm like surprised how sweet they are. I'm like, I don't even cook these. Fuck that. I'm gonna eat them raw.
Dude, I eat almost all my greens raw. I had a celery one, like I probably mentioned this on the show like last year, but I was getting it from like the same place for a long, long time. And then one year they just had a fucking banger crop and it had so much more flavor than any celery I'd ever had. It wasn't just like this thing that can, be a avenue for ranch or blue cheese to go into my mouth, on the side with wings or something. It was like I can eat this by itself and be extremely happy with like how it tasted. And I think it's a 0 calorie food. I think like just chewing it, if you don't put something on it, you like actually lose calories by consuming it. So it's like good fiber, good hydration. So it's one of those kind of guiltless
Yeah,
pleasures
it's
to
actually I think it's
consume.
calorie well, not only calorie neutral, I think it's calorie negative. Like
Yeah, I
it
think you're right.
takes calories for your body to digest it.
Yeah, and even just the chewing process, I think
For
that's where
sure.
digestion all begins, and it's
I like it. Put some
solid.
peanut butter on that shit. Oh, good to go.
It is that's another great carrier, peanut butter. That's like back in the day, ants on a log. I think they put raisins and peanut butter,
Oh
but
yeah, now you're kicking it up. You could take those instead of raisins, you can use uh the chocolate, little chocolate, what are they called?
Hershey Kisses or like the chocolate chips.
Chocolate chips, yeah. Oh, that's
I
my
would
favorite.
prefer that to
Chocolate
raisin
chips.
for sure, because then you got
Hell,
like a Reese's on the top almost
hell
effect going
yeah.
on.
Now you're talking. You can make it dark chocolate so it's more healthy if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say like a natural dark chocolate. Some of that stuff actually is. I'm not a dark chocolate person, but I've had some of these more natural sweets recently and been very impressed by how well done they can be. Did I ever send the link out to? I don't think I did. Sorry, GMF, I think it was. Um,
He's like, this guy, he's lying. I didn't get nothing. See, now you're getting everybody talking about tomatoes. They're saying you need to get some San Marzanos. Get some San Marzano tomatoes. I haven't grown those yet
I
myself,
like
though.
sweet. So if anybody's got my neighbor, I grew up next to an Italian family, and they would make this really sweet pasta sauce with their tomatoes, and they were like
Oh,
cherry sized tomatoes, but
yeah,
they
it's a
could
pain
get
in
as
the
big.
ass. I made that before.
They could get as big as like almost like an apple, like a small apple, and you'd bite into it fresh, and it tasted almost like an apple. It was like crunchy and like sweeter.
Crunchy.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was a much crisper tomato than I'd ever had. So I don't know if it was the time that they harvested it or how he grew it, but it was like organic soil just in the backyard. I used to sit back there with a BB gun and like shoot little they had a tin can at the top to scare the squirrels and shit off. So they'd pay me like a nickel or something to scare off the squirrels every time I shot the gun. And
Nice.
good times, man. And then you'd have like pasta every Tuesday and Sunday with them, and they just had they had the old school crank your own pasta thing, like put
Oh
the kind of
shit.
dough in there, and uh
I bet it
man,
was so good, dude.
it was funny. Like the dude was a plumber, like an Italian plumber, and I was growing up playing like Super Mario. I was like, dude, this guy's like Super Mario. Like
That's awesome.
I,
Was
I
his name
loved it though.
Mario?
Vincenzo, like
Oh,
people called him
Vincenzo.
Vince.
It's even better. It's funner to say. Wow.
Yeah, and he was married to
Vincenzo.
Fran or Francine. She was a great lady, man. They were good people. I was very spoiled. I can't really consume Olive Garden at this point because I've been so spoiled by good Italian food that to me is like what I imagine Mexican people feel like Chipotle is, right? They're like, this is not real Mexican food. This is somebody's take or Taco Bell, maybe. I don't know. But to be honest, I've had both of those and enjoyed them. Although I did get E. coli eating at Chipotle, so I've stopped eating there. So fuck that place.
So you're saying Taco Bell is safer than Chipotle, is what you're
Hey
saying.
man, it's got higher health ratings and they haven't had multiple E. coli outbreaks. So I'd bet my
There you
money
go.
on going to Taco Bell. You might get the shits, but you're not going to get E. coli. I
The
don't think.
science is in, folks.
You heard it here first on Growing with My Fellow Growers. Jack's approving. You know what? I'll shout out the local San Diego one. Go with Jack in the Box if you have that option.
Ooh,
That's
Jack in the Box. I remember them from Texas. Those were nice. I like Jack in the
it's
Box.
a different level, man. There's like In and Out is another one that's like out here. We get these little local fast food chains that don't expand to the rest of the country for whatever reason. I guess they want to keep their quality control up, is what In and Out says. I'm not sure what Jack in the Box's reason is. Like Whataburger is another one, I think. I actually don't love Whataburger. It's like
Waterburger, you mean the mustard burger? Because that's they put 1,000 pounds of mustard on your burger there.
all I could remember is like
I like mustard, but damn, they really
my
like it a
brother
lot
did
more
not
than
like it. We
me.
were road tripping and there was just so many fucking flies. I think it might have just been the particular one that we were at in that restaurant. I was like, damn, this is like the cleanliness for me is important in a establishment that serves food. And I get that there's doors that open and close and like during summertime, some places have a lot more bugs. But yeah, that was my memory of that place. And yeah, fast food generally is not the best. Grow your own food as well as your own cannabis. That way you can enjoy the fruits of your labors, literally. I mean, there's a reason that term exists, right? The fruits of our labor. You take the time to. Fruit is just like a flower, and the fact I think it's actually further along, right? You have to get the flowers first, and the fruit comes along. So it's a long
Yep.
process. It doesn't. It's not like overnight, right? It's not like growing a green veggie plant or something like. You can kind of harvest it multiple times, and like you get almost like instant gratification. It's one of those things. It's almost like a multi-year plant. Like I think strawberries take a couple years before they start to establish and start blooming and really providing good amounts of fruit.
I think they usually bloom on the first year, but the usual go-to is to, like you're saying, is to pick off those flowers so that they root and concentrate on getting deep roots. So the second year they really kick out good berries. But they're only good for a couple years, and then you want them to kind of be replaced by their runners.
Yeah,
And that,
that's the thing. They have the runners. It's like you can clone them out and you don't want them to overrun the individual plant. It's kind of like a sort of thinning of the herd. It's funny. I was looking into the Shasta Daisy, which is one that I just love the history of. It like was a 17-year breeding process. The dude, it was a four-way hybrid, and then he F2'd it, Luther Burbank in 1901. But one of the processes that they had for that plant is called like deadheading, which I thought was kind of a funny term. I
oh
was like,
yeah,
oh man. Yeah, but I think it's just a general gardening term where you go through after
especially in
the flower,
flowers. Yeah.
you just basically chop the tops. And like I'm like, oh man, people do this with cannabis sometimes. They like harvest the tops and then the lower shoots grow up and they get more light and then it continues. And especially with outdoor crops, I've seen a lot of like NorCal, Oregon, and just general even Michigan growers that have had success with the multi-tiered kind of harvesting. And yeah, I don't know. Have you ever gone with that approach, being that you've got some outdoor grows under your belt there, Spartan?
I have we've done that maybe once or twice, but it's always out of like we didn't have the room to harvest everything we had to harvest. So we harvested just like the top half of all the plants. That gave us enough room to put it in there and dry and gave those bottoms time to develop for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks for us to dry, process, and get the space open again. Then we could get the plants in there. But that's only when we had like basically we bit off more than we could chew, kind of a deal. And we only did that one year. It's a very good, I don't see anything wrong with it. And if it works for you, you're just rolling the dice for 2 more weeks. And when you're outdoors, that's kind of what you're doing late in the season here in Michigan is you're rolling the dice. So
Mold and Bort primarily.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It's usually moisture either in the form of snow or rain. And always prefer the rain over the snow because the snow brings cold temperatures, which brings mold. So yeah. But yeah, if you had like a greenhouse or a hoop house or something like that, maybe you can get away with that for sure. It's definitely a viable way to do things. And they always swear the like the I don't want to call it the old wives' tale or the whatever you want to call it, but it was always said that those were the best smoke, or if they were allowed to go for the 2 more weeks from the underneath because they were older. And but I'm like, yeah, whatever, that doesn't make sense. But okay.
to me, I've always I feel like the tops are always the best, and people always like to have sort of debates about it. And I'm sure some study somewhere will show in some environment you can get the best terpene or cannabinoid expression out of the middles, but or the bottoms or
Good
something
stuff
like that.
everywhere, so I'm not, it's just give me the weed, whatever.
Yeah,
Smoke it and we
good
can debate
buds.
all you want.
Speaking of good buds, we got XYZvector in the
There you
house,
go.
and we've got a 28-hour cycle. We were wondering,
Definitely looks
is that
flowering.
14 on, 14 off? I'm going to spotlight your grow for everybody here to see, and you can tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, it's 14 on, 14-hour off. It's 28-hour total days. I had to start it with a 28-hour cycle. I don't think you can switch that up mid grow and not have issues. Um, yeah, so see if I can get a little bit
It
closer
could
on
go.
They're
some of
looking
these.
chunky, man. That right side, the tops are looking fat and healthy.
Yeah,
What are you thinking so far compared to your 12-12 or whatever your normal routine is?
it's got its advantages and disadvantages. The main advantages is that the plants seem to take longer. So a lot of people say they don't think plants count days. I'm going to have to disagree with that. Trying to get my
I'll go
focus
with
set up.
they can finish faster under ideal conditions. So if that's counting days, like if you do everything right, you can shave off a
I think
week or a couple days.
they absolutely count days and nights because they have photosynthesis, photos.
Photoreceptors.
Photoreceptors.
Well, yeah, and they have photosystems like photosystem one, photosystem two that kicks in during the dark cycle. So I think it definitely does count the days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed is they're taking. So I was feeding them and I was just following the regular nutrients schedule, not anticipating them actually needing more days, more actual calendar days. So I started cutting back the newts, and yeah, they started to yellow a little bit. And
What is this week wise? Like I would guess 5, 6.
yeah, we got 2 more weeks to go.
So this is like
So
a 8 weeker and you're going into week 6 or
yeah. So I'm in week 6, but that's their weeks. It's not the actual calendar weeks. They're in day 79, and they're 45 days into flowering. So they got another 15 of their days before they'll be done.
oh wow.
So
That makes me totally call into question if it would make more sense to shorten the day versus extend it.
yeah, well, see, what I'm noticing though is that I mean, they still got 2 weeks and they're already pretty damn chunky. I mean, you can see around there.
They are looking
So,
great.
yeah, well, and I had an issue a couple weeks back or about a month ago where I had a failure in one of my systems and I was out on the road. So I couldn't really water the plants like they should have been watered. And so I had to kind of cut back the light a little bit. So they kind of stretched a lot, if you can see that. I mean, they're, I don't know how to really give you a good reference of size, but
Maybe like 3 foot.
well, like nodal distance. I mean, look at that. That's almost a hand distance right there. Normally my plants are a lot tighter.
It almost looks like an OG.
Yeah. Well, and these are the short plants. I started out with 16 plants
What
and I
kind of
had
red
to
is
cull
that?
10 of 660.
Okay. Is there any 730 at all?
Yeah, they're in the built into the lights themselves on this one,
Like a
and you can
small
barely
percent?
see. Yeah, there's like maybe four of them in the lights or eight total. So yeah, there's not much there for IR. But
Could have been they were just
I
reaching up towards the light. Was it far away at a certain point when you were gone?
no, no, they were only 12 inches away from the light. But I had to cut the light back 50%. So
Oh, yeah.
they stretched towards whatever light they could get. Um, because I had to cut it back so I could keep the tank cooler and slow down transpiration and keep up with my lack
It
of
looks like it
water, I
worked
guess.
for the most
Oh
part. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't see the big tall bolters. I mean, I had ones that actually went all the way almost to the top of that tank. So yeah, there most of them 10 of them were really tall. And I mean, I tried to bend them over. And then when I trimmed them up and got rid of all the stuff I didn't want, it looked like poor, sad Charlie Brown Christmas trees. Remember those Christmas trees on Charlie
Yeah.
Brown commercial? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they're doing okay. They got 2 more weeks. Normally I'd probably, if this was like a 12 hour grow, they'd be coming down about now, but they still look like they got more time on them.
Oh, for sure. By the hairs
Yeah,
alone, they're all still white.
I was saying it might be
Yes.
more than 2 weeks even.
Yeah, I was thinking
Uh,
like that looks more like a 9 weeker than an 8 weeker, to be honest, or maybe even a 10 weeker if we're going like for more sedating effect.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're growing. They've been bulking up. I can see their bulk increasing almost every day. So I
Have the
mean, it's
pistils started to curve or like change color at all?
not in this tent. I mean, there's a couple little brown ones, but they're far and few between. So they're not. And just had the loop out yesterday. I was looking at the trikes, and they're still clear. So
Some fade faster and harder than others. What's your EC like right now?
I'm running about 1100.
Okay, I think that's fine.
Yeah,
Um,
and you guys were talking about different water sensors. I have I have the one you were talking about, the blue mat. I'll have to get to the other tank. And I also have
Yeah.
these sensors down here. And these are pretty cool. These are they tell you moisture, temperature, and bulk EC. So they actually tell me what the EC in the media is. So they're pretty cool.
What brand of those? Is that GrowLink or what is that?
No, well, it's the Chinesian version of GrowLink.
Oh,
Instead of
okay.
paying $300 for sensors, I'm only paying 30.
what's the
Nice.
name? Shout out to the cheap home grow.
It's I'd have to look it up. It's some Chinese company. Um, I'm trying to think. Calm Wind Link. Yeah, that's the name.
I'm sure that
I
leaf
know.
right there at the bottom is gonna make some of our audience want to pull on it.
Oh, I want to pull on it too, but it's still attached. So I'm letting it suck whatever it wants out of it. And yeah, I'll probably cut it off the next day or two. I
Say it's
mean, those
getting.
are the
I
go
like
ahead.
the Spartan method. It's if it gets like more than like 50% messed up, that's usually when I'm starting. What would you Spartan kick that leaf, Spartan, or are you gonna let it go for another day?
I would take a lot of the leaf that's there. It would be gone already. And it's
Oh,
not
you
sh-
actually
because
removed the like
yeah.
this one has nothing to it. It should probably be gone. But I haven't really done my trimming for the week. And that's something I usually do every Sunday. I mean, there was a lot more leaves though on this that had to come off
It
that
sounds
were
like you made the
just
best of a rough situation because things kind of went out of whack for a bit, and even from a distance, you managed to salvage it, which is sort of a beautiful
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and it's done
Oh yeah.
stretching, so you made it past the sketchy part.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it turned out okay. I think they'd be even better or further along if I didn't have to do what I had to do. But you gotta roll with the punches.
Yeah, we were talking about that
Let's
earlier. That's growing for you.
Yep. Let's go over the other tent here. Let me get this tent opened up over here. Sucks. I got to drag my computer around with my camera.
I almost did that earlier to refill my water. I just turned the mic off or the video off while Spartan was talking for a little bit and ran to the refrigerator, filled it up real quick, and got back. I was listening to my phone. I'm like, I don't want to miss what he's saying, but at the same time, I was dying of thirst.
So this is the blue mat sensor you guys were talking about, and it's kind of the gold standard for all the other sensors. Right now, I just watered them first time for the day, so it's low. It's at 29 or 23, and it'll go up to about 80 when it's really dry. And when I got home from the drought condition, it was at 630, which I've never seen it do before.
Oh my God, 6:30. Nice.
Yeah, it
I've
was
seen some
sad
organic
shit.
soils go like 104, 105 before they started dripping back onto it. But I think, yeah, I think 80 is probably more. I've never used them, so it's interesting to see the different ranges that work for different people. This looks like a healthy tent as well.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, this one's showing more yellow on its leaves. I mean, you can see the yellow down on the lower leaves. So I've been increasing my nitrogen a little bit more grow because I think I started tapering it off too soon, thinking I was growing normal plants, but I guess I'm not. But the main takeaway from this is that, yeah, it does grow big, thick buds, and we're still 2 weeks before, and that's 2 of their weeks, which is, I believe, 18 of our days before I'll even start considering harvest them. But I mean, they're pretty frosty. Let's get this thing to focus right. So, yeah, and I'm running these senses on this one too. This is the thirstiest plant. And
Have
it's
you
kind
ran
of
these strains? Have you ran them before, or are these run from seed? These look like from seed.
they're seeds. Yeah, I've
Okay.
never ran these strains before.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so yeah, they're
My,
all new strains for me.
my other question was, what is 8 weeks in 28-hour days compared
Hmm.
to 8 weeks in 24-hour days?
Um, well, every 6 days of regular days, you gain a day and or you lose a day in the 10. I don't know how to explain it. So like every 6 days, 6 times 4 is 24 hours. So it basically loses a day. So I'll say like, oh, I'm on day seven, 6 in the on the light cycle, but it's actually day 7
So I
on
just
the
did the
calendar.
math. It's 1,568 hours for eight
Okay.
weeks of the 28-hour cycle, which comparing that to, because it's 56 days for 8 times 7, gets you to 56. And then if we're doing 24-hour cycles, that would be, let's see, 24 times 56, 1,344. So you have a difference of, let's see,
About
1568 minus 1,344, 224-hour difference over 8 weeks, which divide that by 24 for hours in a day. There's essentially 9.3 extra days added onto an 8 week cycle.
hmm And it does add on. The plants are like they're like in slow mo. I mean, as far as the calendar is concerned. So every they they're actually acting like they're on. They're still got 14 of their weeks to go. I mean,
It's
because
interesting.
they start to senesce about 2 weeks into till their end. Usually, not all plants do it, but that's been my observation.
Have you considered doing like a 6 on, 5 off, 6 on, 5 off kind of thing to get like, or like 6 on, 6 off, 6 on, I don't know, to essentially like
A shorter day
mess with
period.
the, yeah, but you're going to give like the same total amount of light and essentially have more days, but in the same 8 week cycle. You could essentially have
Yeah.
like 16 weeks worth of
Let me ask you
days.
this. Have you tried 12 hours on and 12 hours off? Have you tried that?
Oh yeah, I've grown plants like that. Yeah, that's usually my
The
my
gold standard.
yeah, that's my gold
Well,
standard right
no, but
there.
what I'm saying is though, it's like I get excited about stuff like this, but I want to see somebody do it with a strain that they've grown before so they can say, yeah, there was a yield difference, or because you won't be able to even know because you haven't grown this one before, so you don't know if there's a yield. Because what I'm thinking is well, it might still be worth it if the yield's better, because you're saying how the buds are bigger, but we don't know if the yield's bigger because we don't know what we don't have a
There's no
control.
control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I wanted to do that, but right now I've only got one res running, so that would cause a mismatch. You know what I'm saying? One would get to flower and need different newts than the other. I
Citizen
mean,
science is easier said than done. Oftentimes, it's tough to. I mean, we knock a lot of the actual scientists for not conducting great experiments because they should, in theory, have good funding and universities and stuff behind them. We're just home growers that are having fun and trying to see A/B testing. Like, does this light work better than that light? Does this nutrient work better than that nutrient? Or does this light cycle work better than that one? And so we kind of are in our own curiosities exploring what works best for us in our situations, but
well,
oftentimes it's not
well,
perfect science, as like we saw with the I showed a side by side of like a HPS spectrum versus like a bluer spectrum LED. I think the dude's name was Ohm's Law, and he had like one on one side and one on the other side, and they were sharing the same nutrient film technique, but one of the lights was closer than the other lights. So, and like one of the plants stretched more than the other one, so it wasn't like an exactly perfect experiment. I invited him to come on the show. Apparently, they did not like our comments about their experiment, so they did not take up my offer to come on the show. Sorry, Ohm's Law. I'm still enjoying that light that you made that I bolted onto my LED. So, cheers to you for that. But yeah, you know, we try to be honest, and I think sometimes people will take that as like an attack on their works, and any non-positive feedback for some people is considered like haters, and um, I hope that we don't come across that way.
Well,
I can see how it can be
no,
considered that
not
way,
at
but I
all.
try to be constructive with our feedback, and how could we do it better next time, just like I would with the scientist or with my buddy, you know. And I think it's good to be fair across all levels and experiences.
Yeah, my next grow, I'm going to do a 24-24. This one was more to see what the hiccups and difficulties would be trying to do a 28-hour day or 28, yeah, 28-hour day. Um, the main difficulty is that the on and off times are always shifting by 2 hours every day.
24/24
Um,
is going to be crazy, bro. Like the plants don't like 24-hour dark periods. I think that's going to be a rough one on the plants,
no,
but who
no, no,
knows? We'll
no,
see.
no, no. I'm not gonna flower.
I think he means
No,
12,
I'm gonna
12.
do 12-12. Yeah, 12-12. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. I was like
No,
24 on, 24 off. Damn, we're pushing
no,
them.
no.
This is going to be a stress
Better
run.
be growing autoflowers.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
I was like,
see
in
20.
theory, wouldn't they flower still potentially? Because like the amount of light per light cycle versus dark cycle, but maybe it would have to be an autoflower because yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb, but that's one of those things that would have to be an experiment run. Probably a very quickly found out that these are just vegging the whole time.
That's
Day
another
300
No,
and there's no
time.
tomatoes in my greenhouse.
See,
no, I
I
don't.
love
I don't.
that's what I love about autoflower. I can leave it in my tool belt, and when some weird, obscure, stupid problem comes up, I can be like, bam, autoflower. You can still grow. It's not, it's not the perfect solution, but it's a
So many people have
solution.
smoked them and not even known and gotten real high and had a real good
Yeah.
time. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they're the world's best, strongest, most potent for the average connoisseur out there who's been smoking for 20, 30, 40 years and been blowing themselves out with the best shit possible.
I've
But
got
for
some. I've
a lot of
grown
people,
some, but I'm not growing them now, so I don't know. I will grow them if the situation arises to where I need to, but yeah, like you're saying, right now I have photo periods to get through.
they're not terrible. I mean, they're definitely serviceable. Like I'd
The
say
newer
nine out of
one, the
10
newer
people.
stuff too, 2020 Mendocino, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from there. It's just
They're
I
getting
don't
better. They're getting a lot better.
Humboldt Seeds has a Bubba Kush auto and an OG Kush auto. If you like either of those strains and you want to try an auto, that's decent. I have smoked both of those, and I was surprised as a Bubba and OG fan that an auto could actually be like 8 or 9 out of the 10 way there. You know, like that impressed me, and especially for what it is. Like it's a possibility where some have no possibility otherwise. So it's like that is their little patio grow, or that's their little, oh, my lights turn. I talked with a guy for a long time listener. They're probably still listening, but they had a situation where their power would constantly be turning off for like 2 hours or 6 hours or however many hours. So if they had photo periods, a lot of them would just herm. So they're like, fuck it, I'm just gonna grow the best autos I can find. And they crushed it. They used little Earthbox Juniors and they fucking smashed it with these, auto flowers because light could go on and off. It didn't matter. Like they're happy to get the light whenever it was there.
So I do
awesome.
believe if you did a 24 on, 24 off, they would flower. I thoroughly believe it. Um, However, your grow length and actual real human days would be astronomical. You're probably looking at a 6 month grow right there.
I think it would try to re-veg during the 24-hour on time.
Yeah,
I think it would
I
depend
don't
on the
know.
DLI, like how
It
much
depends on the
you
strain
cranked
for
it.
sure. For sure, the strain is number one, depends on.
Right. What I'm more curious about is shortening the day to like a 6 on, 6 off, because there's these like 16 weekers, right? And what you're finding, XYZ Vector, is going to a day of 14 on, 14 off, or a 28-hour day, it basically just extended the cycle. You got 9 extra days.
Hmm.
It's still going to be an 8 weeker roughly. But it could have just been an eight weeker if you just did 12, 12. And so what
Yeah.
I'm thinking is if you did 6 on, 6 off, 6 on, 6 off with like a Neville's Haze or something that's like a 16 weeker, essentially you're getting double the amount of days in that same 8 week period. So you get a 16 week period in an 8 week cycle. And if it's night cycle, dart cycles that help the development of something like that, it could be something to mess around with to potentially get it to finish a little sooner. Maybe instead of 16 weeks, that would make it finish at 9 or 10 or 11 or something like that.
My
But
concern with that is it would I don't know if the plants would make enough sugars in that short period of time to I don't know. Yeah. It would be worth trying though.
I think using far red in your spectrum with 660 nanometer red will create the Emerson effect during your lights on time, whatever that time is. And I think that's why these lights that I'm using now have shaved days off of harvest windows. And it's
I
because the plants are like photosynthesizing faster, the light or more
It's just
efficiently.
better. Every
Yeah.
like when you dial it in, the better you do it. I've noticed because I have the 730, I run Emerson the whole time. They're like, "Oh, do you do it to run like a 13-hour day?" No, I run 12 on or even like 11 and a half on with the 15 or 30-minute red before and after to attempt to put them to bed or whatever. But I'm
mm-hmm.
running the 730s my whole light cycle because it boosts my
Yeah.
660s. It's the
Yeah.
Emerson effect. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I thought 730 was just like a sleep wake thing." And it's
Yeah,
like it
people
is
are so
that
confused about that. Yeah, I just want to cover that or make that
both.
distinction for people. It's like there's two things. The 730 nanometer, the far red, it does two things. It's in conjunction with 660 nanometer during lights on, during the regular light cycle, 12 hours, whatever your light cycle is. That's going to help your plant photosynthesize more than either one alone. So it'll get a better response with both of them. It's the Emerson effect. But then you can also, after lights out, so after your lights are out, you can throw up the far reds for the last whatever 5, 10, 15 minutes. There's big arguments on the length of time or if this even works. But it's supposed to signal to the phytochromes that it's nighttime and the plants will start
Yeah.
that photosynthesis cycle too, that night cycle
Well,
faster.
well, and I'm doing that. So what happens during lights out is basically the main lights start dimming. They're on a electronic control. They'll dim, and then about 5-10 minutes before lights go, the main lights will go turn off, and then the reds will stay on for an extra 5 or 10 minutes. And
So
yeah, they like
The,
that.
the far reds, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
So I actually saved this on my story because I've explained it to people so many times that I'm just like, you know what, I'm gonna make a save story for this, and it shows it very well. This is the actual Emerson enhancement. Here's 660, or I think that may be 640 nanometer red, but essentially the red that's in the typical light spectrum. That's how efficient it is with photosynthesis. This is the 730 nanometer. That's how efficient it is. So if you add those two together, you get this purple bar and this yellow bar. For people that are listening, I'm
And then
describing something on YouTube. But when you combine them, you would think that, oh, you're just going to get the combined effect of both of their efficiencies. But the Emerson effect is this extra green bar. They're more efficient when used together. So when I always say it used to be like 7 + 2 = 9, it's not 7 + 2 = 9. It's 7 + 2 equals like 13. The effect is
yes.
is much stronger than one or the other used alone. And so that's one of the main parts of like right now, here is my LED. I've got these 3500 kelvins on the left and right, which are my cobs. But then you see in
Right.
the middle, I've got 730 nanometer red, and then I've got 660s on
660,
these
all those other ones, yeah.
halos, and then I've even got 440 or 430
Uh-huh.
nanometer blue, little just to have peaks on things that trigger whatever.
That balances your reds so you don't get too much stretch, so that's good.
Right. And I also saw some study that said 440 brings out higher terpene production and anthocyanin production. So I was like, oh, more purple buds. Oh,
Absolutely.
here it is, actually. The thing, the quote,
Yeah.
chlorophyll photosynthesis process, blah, blah, blah. But I show
Yeah.
the
I
actual
just
like
saw another study said the same thing, a more recent study that said that that same the blue light it was with this caveat when you're already exposed to a full spectrum light, so basically you already have pretty much enough light to flower under. Added blue to that, increased cannabinoids. I was like, okay, I like that.
I'll take it.
Yeah, that
I'll
looks
take
like
it.
my sunset. Yeah, it
Yeah.
does that.
So
It slowly fades out the whites, and then it gets to where they can't fade no more, and it cuts them off, and then the red just stay.
yeah. So I have my
It usually
sunrise
gets about
essentially.
10%, under 10%, and the channel usually cuts off.
Yeah, well, I normalized my channels so that I
Oh,
can
nice.
go down from zero to, but
Oh, it's a one.
my yeah, all the way down to zero. Zero is
Oh, it's a
basically the
zero.
lowest they'll go, and then they turn off after that. But yeah, different lights behave completely different towards those dimmer signals. I mean, it's crazy.
The thing though that we didn't discuss, we got the Emerson effect kind of visually represented with that. That's like the actual Emerson study and showing the efficiency of how much. I think it was like photoreceptors or whatever, where they measured exactly how many, uh, how effective the plants were with one versus the other. But the thing that we kind of brushed over was the sleep wake. You can push instead of going 14, 14, you can go 13 on, 11 off, which a lot of people do with the red lights for that last 15 or 30 minutes to essentially, the way I've kind of heard it described is you're putting them to sleep faster so that they can get into their night cycle and go into their, cycle two, their dark cycle more rapidly. And that way you can run the extra hour of light during the day. So instead of 12, 12, you're running 13 on, 11 off. And that extra hour of light typically will increase your yield, sometimes cannabinoid production, some fine terpene production. I personally think 12, 12, or even like 11, 13, or 11 and a half, they all work great if you're keeping the environment happy and the light levels relatively in the right zone. The DLIs are like within 5 or 10% from that half hour to an hour difference. Like it's minimal. It's more, there's probably 10 or 15 other things that each one of us could do: better humidity, better airflow, better, water in and out, better soil mixes, better testing of the sap of the tissue or the soil itself, or EC meters and things. Like there's always something that we could do a little bit better. And so I think the actual hours in a day from the 11-13 versus the 13-11 is probably minuscule, but it's cool that you have the option if you're running that 730 with a much larger percentage of crop, because I've seen personally there's stuff that will not flower at 13 on if you don't do that trick. Like some stuff was bred under 12-12, kept under 12-12, like OG Kush and a lot of these older things is what come to mind. Cookies, they won't like a 13-hour day just because they've been under 12-hour days for the last 20 years, right? So messing with that cycle now is like you're kind of, and I almost feel like messing with the general cycle is you're fighting against nature. So I think we might just find out 12-12 is fucking solid, or 11-13, or like whatever, Hawaii or the equator or whatever areas that grow really good cannabis in Africa or the Middle East or wherever, those cycles work. So if we can emulate those somewhat closely, indoor, outdoor, greenhouse, then we're going to have pretty solid result.
Yeah, and speaking more to that Emerson effect, what happens is that there's two different photosynthetic processes. There's the A and the B, and when you supply that extra red, when it goes from photocycle B up to A, that extra red actually counts for, instead of one photon, it's like four photons.
The other thing is there's like phytochrome and cryptochrome. So like blue stimulates one part of, I think, photosystem one, and red stimulates a different part of photosystem
Mm-hmm.
one.
I think
And
blue is the
photosystem two is,
cryptochrome, and then the red is the phytochrome, I believe.
I'm pretty sure you're correct. And that's just interesting to know because like a full spectrum light, a white light, is going to have both of those in there. So you don't actually need spikes. When I got mine, was just like, I kind of wanted a little bit of a push in certain ones just to try and trigger more of these effects if I can. But at the end of the day, a 3500K light, a 3000K light, a 4000K light, they're all, I think, going to produce pretty good stuff if you've got all the other stuff dialed in. If you've got like GG4 and you're running at 12-12 at like 77 degrees, 55% humidity to 70% humidity, depending on the stage of the growth, you're going to have pretty darn good results as long as the airflow and,
You got it
Things are there.
supported well and it's watered right.
Staked up, yeah, because that one will flop over on itself. That's the one caveat with the GG4 or original glue as it's now being sold in the legal markets, which is funny to see. Cap just did a drop. It was Big Buns. It was an original glue cross. So shout out to Capulator. He just dropped something. It was original glue cross to oh man, I should probably look it up, but yeah, it was a Mac cross to something else. I think it was like Big E cross to Mac or something like that. But yeah, shout out to Capulator. I got to meet him a few months ago. He seems like a pretty cool guy, and a lot of people really like the Mac one. Like I said, it's just not for me, but I can recognize game. Spartan loves it, and many others love it.
I
So
liked it. I don't like growing it, but I love smoking it, so I keep growing it.
Is it a little bit touchy?
Yeah, and she's slow as shit.
Well, see, if you went to like a 16-hour day, you could chop some days off.
Well, she's slow as shit. And I'm
Oh.
vegging her. I'm vegging her at like 18 hours.
And she just won't go. She just like, I'll take
She
my sweet
goes. She
time.
just, yeah, exactly. She just goes at her sweet time. And then if she gets even the slightest root bounce, she stops. If
Oh,
she's the supermodel, she's just
gotta
gotta
treat her like a princess.
gotta have all the attention. Yep, yep.
so
So
he's
That's
collabing with
crazy.
Flow Gardens. The cross is Gorilla Glue #4 with Big Mac, which is Big EOG cross to Mac. And he said, my selection of Big Buns has incredible structure and ease of growth. It's a grower's dream when it comes to maintenance and flower. It produces connoisseur blush. On the gassy side, it will color up nicely, give proper environment. Expect heavy eyelids on this one and lots of smiles, Cap. So I think it says for the
the
price of
strain is Big Buns.
$250.
That's the name of the strains.
Yeah, Big Buns is a strain, and it was his first or one of his early official clone drops he's putting out into the market now.
His selection of Big Buns. That's amazing. That's
Big
an
buns.
amazing statement.
That makes me think of that song by Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Yeah, me too, man. 100%.
Hopefully, he doesn't get in trouble for that. Fucking, I think it's a fair
No,
enough
he's
name.
already got. Yeah, he'll be all right. He'll be all right.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
tough one with the naming, but as long as it's fire, I mean, looking at the genetics, there's a OG in there, there's a GG4 in there, and all those things are usually pretty fire when they're mixed up. So hopefully it ends up good. Mac is the one that I left out, but Spartan likes it and many others do as well. And so it didn't say Mac 1, it just said Mac. So I wonder if it is the
Might
Caps
be the
cut.
V2.
Perhaps, yeah, because
V2
the
is
Mac
pretty
1,
popular.
a lot of people think is a triploid or something like that because it had such a difficult time being bred with.
It is. I think it's been tested and it's been shown to be triploid.
Okay, so that's confirmed officially, probably.
I believe so.
I think you're right. I think I did hear that. And it would make sense because so many people had such a hard time getting any seed out of it at all. So, um, yeah, that's one of the things
That's my
breeding.
experience for sure.
Did
Speaking of
you
seeds, we had that
did you
question.
get some or any? Were any of them viable?
I got zero. I got zero
Oh,
seeds.
fuck.
I painted that fucking thing. The buds
So
were like,
I think that would mean anybody who's getting max seeds is probably getting
I don't
big
know,
shit.
man. I'm just saying. I did store it myself. I did store the pollen myself and it was in the freezer and all that. So maybe there was a
But it
mis
worked on other plants.
It worked on other plants. It didn't work on that.
That's
But
got me convinced,
I
man.
wouldn't give up until I haven't put it in the room with
Live
a
mail.
male plant. Yeah, live male.
That'll be the true test. But
Exactly.
I've heard some breeders I respect, like Mr. Soul and others, got like some seed. Rasta Jeff, that were able to squeeze a few seeds out of it, but they said it was very low, like not
Yeah.
enough to be commercially viable, which
so
is
hey,
perfect.
do you guys do any like modifications to your watering, like
No.
towards the end? Okay, so you don't do
I do a
any.
drought stress in week
You do
7.
droughts.
I let them
Okay.
one time. I let them drought until they droop like 45 degrees down from neutral or like perked up. I'll let them go all the way down to like 45. I don't let them go like ragged, but I'll let them get to that 45-degree drought and then I'll rewater them real nice. And then sometimes I'll drought them again one more time before like harvest the very, very end, like the last few days. But they might not
Yeah,
droop.
I'm not talking about like a drought. I'm talking like just Okay, so my system's completely automatic, and it's sensing, how much water's in the media, and that determines when it wants to water. Um, when I talk about like a precision drought, I'm talking like you let it dry back during the night, and then you wait a while till you start seeing the media dry out, and then you start hitting with water until you do like shots, and you keep doing these shots every 15 minutes till you get run off.
No,
Okay.
I don't do that at all.
I don't have the ability to. I mean, I've never tried it. I don't have an automated watering system, and I think it's a possibility. I mean, there's like Doc has set up systems where he's watered a bunch of times a day, and it can work. It's just
So yeah, I
I
would water. I just water like in my home system. When my bottom reservoir, I let it completely drain. It's empty. Once it's empty, then I water again and fill it. And then when I was doing like commercial stuff, or if I'm at the Trichome Forge, well, we're hand watering there now, but we're gonna set up top irrigation, and it's just gonna be drained to waste. And so this is gonna be like watered once a day, maybe twice a day tops, but probably not more. Then we're not gonna. I'm not gonna try to do the
Crop
many
steering.
water, yeah, the crop steering with the many watering is, and we'll just go bigger pots and like 3 gallon pots and water them once, twice a day. And that's how we're doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I since I this is my second grow doing this like I normally I just let it water when it says, oh, it's gone from 100% saturated to 90, and then it just keeps
Yeah, I
watering.
love that. That's cool.
But I've noticed that if I do this precision stress or whatever crop steering they call it, my
Right.
my buds do have way more trichomes from it.
I personally
They
think
they
that
do.
some sort of drought stress has positive result. You just can't
Yeah.
overdo it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hand watering it, it'd be very difficult to know when and all that stuff. But yeah,
It's
I
not that
think what
difficult. You can just watch the plants until they droop.
yeah, I guess you could do that. I mean, but
That's
that's
literally the Guelph SOP, like University of Guelph in Canada, who did the study that found the drought stress had positive results for terpenes and cannabinoids. They did
So,
just cut it off for 10 days. They had an
wow.
auto watering cocoa setup, and they just turned the fucking drip emitters off for 10 days, and that's how long it took. But
God
I don't know
damn.
what I don't remember what media they were exactly in. I think it was like a two per type mix or something like that. But they waited till the leaves went from here to here. And as soon as they hit that, they just turned the emitters back on with a little bit lower EC, I think, for just to even it out. Once it got evened out to the tested gold standard level that they use, they just ran that for the rest of the crop, and it absolutely dominated the main like drought stressed occasion. So I that plus like lavender in the regions in the Mediterranean where it's just so much higher in linalool and so much more valuable are big indications to me that cannabis and other C3 flowers have the ability to benefit from drought stress. But Guelph also did like if you drought stress it every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks and all of those other occasions, it completely lowered the yield, completely hurt the cannabinoid and terpene results. So any more than I personally think like one during the main cycle or like two max, like week 7 and then like at harvest is how I go about it. But any more than that, I think you're overdoing it because some people are like, oh, they'll get a little lazy and be like, I just didn't water my plants today. Drought stress, they're gonna get better. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. If it's in like week 2,
No.
if it's during the stretch, like you're gonna fuck yourself because the plants
Yeah.
really need it during certain times. And they're gonna stunt their growth a lot if they're not getting the water when they crucially need it during the peak growth cycle. And like even messing with like I think Kyle Breeder said he would turn the lights off for like 48 hours or 72 hours when he'd flip sometimes with really stretchy stuff to try and contain the stretch. And then it would like only double versus like tripling or quadrupling in height sometimes. And it's like, I think it's better to veg it for a shorter time and just use that stretch. But it's proof that you can really stunt the plant, whether for good or for worse, by playing around with the cycle or messing around with the drought stress, or even just like, oh shit, my emitter is clogged. I didn't mean to do that, but they drought stressed during a pivotal time in the cycle, and you'll probably see like I got worse yields that time or worse performance generally. So I think generally it is the best idea to try and dial in things the best you can and try to go for like your 10 out of 10 because ultimately we're all going to slip and stumble and make little mistakes here and there. So aim as high as you can. And even if you get that like 9.75 or 9.5, you're still doing a lot better than most.
Well, that's the end thing too, is like people get, I don't want to take people's passion out of it, but people live through social media sometimes and they'll see like a giant facility and maybe that's their end game. That's what they want. They want to work or they want to have their own giant facility. But just because, you don't have a giant facility right now, so don't compare what you see in a giant facility to what you're growing in your spot. Compare yourself to what you grew that plant last time. Is it better or is it worse? And compare yourself to what you did as a grower. Stop looking outward so much and just look inward. You can make these learn the plant and you can make these little changes and experiments. Then can you be like, okay, I've grown this plant. I know what it does. Now I'm going to change one thing. Like I'm going to change the light cycle or I'm going to change whatever. I'm going to use a different thing in my nutrient regime. And then you can see if it makes a difference and if it's worth your time to, either using more electricity on a light cycle or using a little bit more money to buy a product or not, if it makes sense to do that. It's fun. And I understand as a grower, it's fun to just try a bunch of new things. And I've done it. I've done it a million times and I still do it. But it's a bad practice to do that, to just grab something new, but and use it on a new strain that you don't really have a lot of reference with.
I think it's worth doing that side by side testing as much as you can. And an example where I was able to, I think, come out on top with like quality's cheaper in the long run kind of thing is I tried a bunch of composts from local ones to, stuff I got at grow shops to local nurseries, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, from the cheapest to the cheap to the most expensive. Um, and I do feel a good quality compost is worth its value oftentimes. Not saying that you have to pay an arm and a leg. Like Sonoma Valley Worm Farm has a great vermicompost that they call Terra Vesco that they sell at Tractor Supplies all over the country. And it's fair priced and performs incredibly. Nutrient stable, the same microbes are always in every batch. Like it's very consistent, very good stuff. And I've taken to if and when I can't get it locally or make it myself, getting it from a source that I feel like even though I have to pay a little bit more than I would for the cattle compost or the horse compost or whatever, dairy manure or horse manure or chicken manure, which can grow some dank. I mean, Vic High, one of Subcool's inspirations for the super soil, was using chicken manure in his super soil mix. And then Sub switched it over to, I think, like bat guanos and non-chicken manures. He used other types of compost and things like that. But we all, through trial and error, learn what we think has value. And like you see how passionate some people are about that. Like I talked about Clackamas Coot earlier, and he's one of those people who's done the research and read the books, and he can tell you why vermicompost is so fascinating and beneficial. And even being a third of your soil mix, it can, have great results. And when you make it yourself, it's actually a very, affordable and sustainable thing. You could take food scraps from your own home and turn it into that. So it's one of these things that has multi-benefit and can be sourced for a lot lower price than many people might realize. And I think that's one that has great benefit in my garden. And I'm always kind of continuing to beat that dead horse maybe for some that worm castings are amazing. Get the best ones you can. Because when you do, if you're in organic soils or even in, when I was growing in cocoa, throw a little bit of that stuff in there, get a little bit of microbes in your life. If you're not doing a stale, set up a little synganic. And I think those microbes will help unlock some of that nutrient that's locked up in that cocoa that might not have been broken down by the chelation or chelation process.
You got to put something on. That's something that's pretty safe. You can't really overdo too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's like very low in any nutrient content. It's basically like microbes with a tiny bit of nitrogen content, depending on what you fed the worms. Some people steer it to be a little bit higher in certain cycle type nutrients. Like I've heard people feeding like lots of, I don't know, bananas or something to try and get higher potassium or phosphorus or something like to give a late flower or something like almost organic bloom booster style, but something that you're not going to overdo it with because it's really like less than 1% across the board. And It's more, I think, just sustaining healthy microbial populations within the soil, good aeration and good water flow to help unlock nutrients that are very likely already there that ideally you put there at the start. With that said, we just hit the 5:45 hour here on the West Coast, which means it's my time to pass it over to Spartan Grown for his final thoughts and shout outs before he gets running on over to Michigan Bros Grow Show in about 15 minutes.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, XYZvector, man, for coming on and showing your grow. I love it, and for showing your
Thanks.
bud. I always love doing that stuff. Shout out to this chat. There's a little bit of drama going in there, a little bit today, but we all have our days and we all have our differences. But everything seems to be pretty decent. It hasn't gotten too ugly, so I appreciate you guys. And oh, I'm going to the Trichome Forge. I'm gonna go with the Trichome Forge. Me and my buddy Big Pone will we do have another event with the Gems and Genetics crew on July 7th. We'll be in Byron Center to an event that is it's an award ceremony for the cup and it's free admission. So we'll be there with a booth. So maybe we can see some people if you're out in the west side of the state, Michigan, on July 7th. Other than that, I'll be on the Michigan Bros Grow Show here in about 14 minutes. Much love. Keep growing, everybody.
Thanks as always for joining, Spartan. Have a great one.
Your love, man.
Anything new and exciting coming down the pipe? You said you've got some other experiments coming up with the light cycle. You're going to go to 12-12 next, or just back to the regular old 24-hour cycle?
I'm
To
gonna go back to the regular, yeah, the regular 12 on, 12 off for flower. For the next grow, and then because I'm changing out a lot of my equipment. This equipment's been run for a year. I'm trying to get more efficient and quieter. And then probably going to do another 28-28, but I want to do one tent 12-12, and then the other one 14-14, and actually grow the same plant in the two different tents and see what happens.
I think that'll be a lot of
So,
fun getting that side by side experience of different light cycles where, same cut, similar lighting, similar environment, similar nutrients, like as much as you can, keeping
mhm.
a sort of control and getting to know one, ideally the best cut that you come across in the next few rows, hanging on to that, and then having it be your test subject. But one thing a
Yeah.
lot of people have mentioned is growing a plant for the first time from seed versus growing it from clone for the first time is like sometimes it changes, it adapts maybe more to your environment or it becomes more mature as it is older. Like you might have only vegged it, let's say 12 or 20 days and then like went straight to flower and then it's kind of a more immature plant that's flowering versus one that's been alive for a year or 6 months or something like that that's fully maybe even showing pre-sex in veg where you've got stigma and pistils starting to pop out on the ladies and those will maybe express a little bit differently in an environment. So getting to really know a plant over not just one but multiple cycles can be a fun experience, whether it's from clone or even consistent seed line. Like I got, I feel pretty intimately um, involved with the Velvet Punch, growing it from F1 to F2 to F3, and then having grown multiple crops of each generation to see how it performed and doing like stress testing runs versus trying to absolutely crush it and realizing that even on the stress test run, it put out some respectable bud, but then when you crush it, it finishes faster and it's significantly better.
Bigger.
So
Yeah.
you do get more bang for your buck when you dial it in. It's worth all the extra effort, like putting the all the bells and whistles in, like doing everything you can, whatever that is, all the things that work for you in your environment with your genetics. You've seen it happen hopefully before with your crops and things like that, but I think every home grower deserves to knock it out of the park at least one time, so that way they can have that nice high bar. Like, oh man, I need to get back to that crop that just was like chef's kiss. Like, have you do you have a strain that you feel like you crushed it with more than anything else?
I've only been running cocoa. I used to do RDWC I did that for about half a year. So I've only really been growing regularly for 2 years now. So I'm still just trying to dial in my system, dial in my process. Um, And so I've kind of just grown a little bit of everything, whatever I buy from the seed bank or whatever somebody sends me for seed. So I haven't really locked in on a strain and it's like, okay, I'm going to grow this regularly and this is what I like to grow.
You get that, and I'm not sure if you say where you're from because it might be a red area, but have you
No,
had the?
Arizona.
Oh, okay, so you've got a dispensary model. Have you been able to go there and check out? Because like I'd say 80 or 90% of the same brands. My wife's from Arizona. We went to the dispensary while we were there last time just to kind of check it out because she worked in the legal industry for a long time and still does. And so it was kind of interesting to see the amount of crossover. And I will say, even like the Arizona exclusive stuff that we tried was high quality. Had some like
Yeah,
Mount Lemon lava, which was it's like a local uh place, and it was a pretty good concentrate. And so shout out to the people in Arizona that are doing their thing in the legal market and putting out some good product.
yeah, I mean, I used to buy like cannabis, but it's like too expensive.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
it's
once you grow
not
your
too
own,
expensive.
no going
Yeah,
back. It's hard to compare.
yeah, yeah. It's I mean, I still got pre-rolls from back before I got my first harvest. And yeah, it doesn't compare. It's
It's
just
you
I
realize
mean,
you're paying Wagyu prices for ground beef,
yep,
like ground chuck.
yep. And last grow, and I still have some more of these seeds from a guy named Dean 420. He has this trop cherry. I love that stuff. And I still got a bunch of his seeds. So I think I'm gonna grow that next cycle. I'm probably gonna start taking clones of her.
Nice, man. Don't let this dissuade you because I know you just said how much you like it. That's another one like Mac that has gotten very popular. And every time I try it, I'm just like, it looks pretty, it tastes really good, but it just I guess I'm a heavier consumer and it doesn't get
Okay.
me the buzz I'm looking for. It's a little on the mellow side, which nothing wrong with
Hmm.
that. I guess you could always smoke more, but it
That's not been my experience, but it's my first time experiencing it. So
that
and
new strain.
I'm not a big consumer, so you know, I'm not I don't consume as much as you probably.
And then there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody should consume exactly how much they want to. It's just that I know that when it comes to different strains, everyone's potency, like I say the Velvet Punch to me is like a 8.5. And like I say it's like a
Hmm.
hybrid. And then somebody I saw, I think a Grow Diaries, and they wrote like 90% indica. And I was like, oh man. So for them, it was way more indica. And like if you look at the lineage, a lot of the stuff is more on the indica side. There's only a tiny bit of sativa on the lineage, and it's kind of far back. So
Yeah.
that being said, I think it's a harvest time thing, and I also think it's a endocannabinoid thing. Like my endocannabinoid
Hmm.
system is different. Lady Greenstock's is different, and like what to us feels like a hybrid because it's like stimulating in the body and mind. It's a little bit uplifting, but also kind of relaxing. It zonks some people like completely like bedtime weed. Like so, I was interested to see and read that when I saw that review, and I appreciate all the feedback. I like honest feedback. I've had at this point nearly 100 growers that have grown different variations of Velvet Punch. So I've gotten to learn a lot about it and seen some stuff that didn't spring up in my garden, like one thing being watermelon phenos and another thing being some hermaphrodism in the F2 generation.
Hmm.
Haven't seen any in the F3 so far, but knock on wood, it's going to be out there. I mean, the lineage has all sorts of different things that contain stuff that herms like OG Kush and Chem and Mexican sativa. So all those things and Thin Mint Girl Scout cookie. Like they like begets like, right? If it comes from a herm, it's more likely to herm. So I'm not surprised that it had the propensity, but it is a little bit sad when you see, but it's like far under 10%. It was like, I want to say between like 3 and 7% of the total people that grew it. And only a handful of those plants that they grew ended up having that issue. So the actual lineage, for those who want to know the specifics of Oat Punch, I talk about all the time. The F1, shout out to Doja DNA, who I collabed with to put out with the F3s, but his F1 originally was Purple Punch, which is Larry OG to Granddaddy Purple, crossed to Cookie 7, which is his original creation, which was Thin Mint Girl Scout Cookie that he crossed to Black Velvet Kush, which is a Mexican sativa, crossed to Chem 4, and then that was crossed to OG Kush to make the male, which was a pretty fantastic creation. I was very happy to be able to ask him to make F2s, and he said sure. And I said, "Can I send them out to people for free?" He's like, "Absolutely! Like spread the love, man." And He sent them to me for free. I sent them out to people for free. And F3s did more of the testing in-house and with just a few other people because just feedback times and things like that. Although I will say I had much higher percentage of growers. Like I see a lot of breeders say like 90% don't grow their seed. I had like over 50% of my people. I think it was like 60 or 70% of the people I sent seeds to grew them. I would be like, hey, are you going to grow that? But not like often, but just like, hey, I sent these out to you. You told me you're going to grow them. I'm just trying to, see the results in a lot of different gardens. And I've seen an indoor, outdoor greenhouse at this point. So I thought it was, despite the handful of herms, too fired and not put out there. Um, I do have
Oh,
seed packs available, and if people in the US do want them, I have 3 packs, 5 packs, or 11 packs. They're 24% off, and I try to keep it in line with what I feel like is quality genetics, like Spartan was saying, between that like $5 and $10 a seed, which I feel is fair. Some people charge more than that, and I think some people equate, oh, if it's more expensive, like quality
it's
is
better.
based on the price. But in
Yeah, no,
reality,
that's not.
some of my best stuff has been freebies from friends or even like the stuff I bought and got freebies from a seed bank or something like that. So the price doesn't actually indicate quality. Neither does the packaging. Sometimes I feel like the fancier the package, maybe the lower the quality of the seed
Mhm.
because they're trying to polish a turd, kind of, so to speak. I try to keep it in line with the dude who initially hooked me up. He gave me glass cork vials, and that's sort of a more sustainable product than a lot of the other stuff I see packaged. And I use old recycled like bubble wrap from old packages that I've gotten to try and minimize the packaging as much as possible. I do have to use a bubble mailer or something to wrap it up in. Brandon Russ has used some like compostable versions of those, so I might switch over to that whenever I do re-up on my, you know, more inside baseball for the people out there. Whenever I re-up on my packaging materials, hopefully there'll be a more eco-friendly thing. But I know at the end of the day, my little small orders of these things that are probably already packaged up in warehouses isn't going to be the thing that saves or changes the earth or the environment. But I do try to make my little, differences as much as I can. Uh, you know, I think every little bit does matter, and eventually, other places will start to come around because as much as everyone wants to make a living and make as much money as possible, when they start to realize it oftentimes comes at the expense of fucking up their local environments and like maybe taking out fish or food supplies, then they realize, oh shit, or like air supplies, like people wise up quick, like, oh shit, we're getting a bunch of fucking illnesses or issues related to these things. So if we can do it a little bit better, then why not at least try to make the efforts.
So, where do you pick up your seeds? I'll try some Velvet Punch. I'll give them a roll.
They're on 50strains.com. So
Okay, perfect.
just it's 50 strains.com, just like the word strains. A lot of people think like 50 shades, like 50 shades of gray or something,
Yeah,
but I do 50
yeah.
strains of green because I'm on the cannabis side. I know a lot of people think strain is not proper, but in biology, it's a plant or animal developed by breeding. And all the stuff that I cover is thankfully done by breeders. So I shout them out and give the history and all that cool stuff in my book, which is also available on that same website to make it a plug going into the last 2 minutes because we are about to close out the show. It's been 2 hours with just the two, and now well, it was two of us initially, and then we had a lovely guest, XYZvector. We really appreciate you coming on and joining the panel and increasing it a little bit today, because it was just Spartan and I. And if you hadn't come, I would have been all by myself for the last 15 minutes. So you really helped fill the air, and I greatly appreciate that. So why don't I pass it back to you, and then you can plug all of your good stuff and let the people know where they can find you if you're looking for them to find you.
Oh, you can find me at Coco for Cannabis. You can see all my grows. I'm not really selling anything yet, but I'm working on making equipment that I'm using that I've been working on for 2 years and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work as far as automation is concerned. Um, Now I'm just working on making it quieter. My issue is you can't hear it, but my system was watering this whole time and it's loud. And it sounds like a train's coming. But
Hey, that's the
yeah,
thing. The beauty is you can dial it in. You can get slightly more efficient fans, slightly better cooling or whatever it is, or quieter pumps, or thicker line or something. You can NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness is what they call it in automotive. You can start wrapping the stuff in foams and materials to my. I have a family member who had to have a stealth grow, and they made a box for their carbon filter that went around
okay.
the carbon filter, and the fan, the exhaust fan, because it was so loud sitting on top of their fan. So basically they put like pillowing type material and like foam around it, and they put it in like a cardboard box that surrounded it. And it was in an area of their house that when it was running without that, you could hear it. And when they ran it with the box over it, it was dead silent to, in the room you would be able to hear it, but like up the stairs or whatever around the corner, no one else in the home could hear it. So it's worth learning how to, you know, noise proof things and make things a little bit quieter. People do appreciate that kind of stuff. Stealth grows are still a valid thing in a lot of states, and even in the legal states. I think a lot of people like to keep it low key. So I look forward to seeing you continue to develop and dial that in. And yeah, wish you the best of luck, and to our future successes. To everybody out there, keep on growing, and growers love. Shout out to all of our panelists who didn't get to make it this week. Many of them will be coming back next week. Much love to all you who show up live on the YouTube, and everybody who listens afterward on the podcast platforms or on X, where I'll be posting this tomorrow morning. Peace and love, y'all. Jack Greenstock signing out. Peace.
Grow love.